am so pleased you're here today. Really and truly, it's nice to see you. As you know, I was away with the youth last weekend. We were up at Blue Mountain in Collingwood, and it snowed, and it was beautiful. Unfortunately, when you're in a cabin and you have a nice warm fire and you're around a bunch of young people playing in the snow all day and having really neat and important discussions, you're unaware of what's going on in the world around you. And apparently the snow was a lot for the drivers coming up to us. And so there was a little concern in terms of us getting home, but we did it and it was okay. And thank you to the drivers who gave a good 4 hours of their day to get us there and back. That said, it was wonderful for us. We were having fun. The kids played in the snow almost all the day, and we played snow football, and nobody died, and that's always a win. Right? It's a win when nobody's... Didn't one year we broke a counselor from Pioneer Camp? He tried to play football with us. Yeah, because we go hard. Right? Good to be back with you. I'm glad we're together, and today I want to talk about something maybe a little different. It's up on the screen probably, so I can't keep it a secret. And that's kind of why I asked our teens to stay in too, because I feel as if it's relevant, this discussion. So I've noticed something, and maybe it's obvious, and maybe you've noticed it also. I've noticed that our society struggles with relationships, and in particular, friendships. And maybe it's a result of coming out of a pandemic and a lockdown. Maybe it's the result of our politics. Maybe it has something to do with our technology and how it's evolved. Or maybe it's a combination of all those things. But the thing is, the reason I struggle is that you and I are relational beings. We were created to be in relationships. Our God is relationship. Father, Son, and Spirit, 3 in 1, perichoresis. And so if we're created in that image, the image of that God, then relationships matter. They're significant for us. A core longing of the human heart is to know and be known. To know and be known. It's a core longing of all of our hearts. And yet we struggle with relationships. The writer David Brooks, New York Times writer, once described a study that took place. It was a long-term study, and in the study they tracked the life of children living in poverty. And within the study there were two groups. One group of children were introduced to other children who were outside of their socioeconomic grouping. So children who were better off economically, in terms of social status, in terms of opportunity. They were able to spend time with children outside of their regular grouping. And then they measured also the children who remained within their community with all the same opportunities and friendships. And what they found over time was that the children who were able to form friendships outside of their social groupings, their standard social groupings like families, and they found that those children did better. They did better economically, they did better socially, they did better in terms of social status as they grew up. They were transformed by the friendships that they made. Both groups were transformed by the friendships that they made. I think there's a ringing. Do you hear a ringing? Yeah. If we could take that ringing out, that'd be great. So that's the power of friendship, right? It has the ability to change us and even change our trajectory in lives. Our friends help us to live better lives. And communities thrive when they work together, where relationships are strong. Communities thrive when people are good neighbors and are friends. So if you want to live in good communities with strong neighborhoods, then a hint to us may be that we need to recover the lost art of friendship. And I think about our community, not just here in St.Andrews, but this community, which, if you didn't know, is the fastest growing community in Toronto. The number of people that will be moving into this community in the next few years is astounding. There are buildings going up all around us. And so it seems to me, if we live in this community, then working on strengthening this community is important. It's valuable. We ought to consider it. Robert Putnam wrote a book, and it was called Bowling Alone. And in his book, he points to a study that says in the last 50 years, the number of people who can say that they have a close personal friendship or confidant has shrunk more than 60%. So 50 years ago, if you polled people and you asked them, do you have a close personal friend or confidant? The majority would say yes. That's not true anymore. It's not true anymore. Outside of the family, most people in our society don't have close friends. But listen to me, we are created to be in relationships. Our neighborhoods, our communities, our society needs us to build bonds with one another. And let me suggest to you that friendship is a gift from God. The Greek word in the Bible that I am talking about is philia. Philia. Philadelphia. Delphia is city. Philia is what we're talking about. It's one of the 4 types of love listed in the Bible. St. Augustine, the Bishop of Hippo, understood that this particular form of love, philia, is when equals are united in a common purpose and pursuit. When equals are interested in pursuing a common pursuit or good or end. So philia refers to love based on mutual respect, shared devotion, joint interests, and common values. It is love. It is the love of a near and dear friend. Philia. That's what we're talking about today. Brotherly love, sisterly love, the love of friends. And what I want to do today and over the following weeks, if you let me, is to talk about friendship. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about how to make friends, because it is a lost art, how to make friends, how to choose friends. Then we're going to talk about conflict in friendships, how to deal with conflict in friendships and communication. But today I want to look at Jesus and how he cultivated relationships and see if we can learn something about that from him. So let's take a moment and pray. Sacred Lord Jesus, you sent your Holy Spirit to your disciples so that they would have a helper and a guide. We pray that you would send your Holy Spirit to be our helper and our guide. May your Spirit pour light into our hearts and make our spirits glow in your glory. We seek to understand and to stay in your word. O Lord, illuminate our hearts with your Spirit and anoint now my tongue that I might speak your truth in grace. Amen. So let's look at our first passage today. I'm going to have a number of passages because we're starting broad and we'll focus in. So just hang on. Let me read it for you. It's found in John chapter 15, verse 15 and 17. Jesus says, "I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in slaves. Now you are my friends, since I've told you everything the Father has told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other." It's the word of the Lord. I want you to notice in this passage that Jesus is intentional. He's intentional. And that's our first point if you're a note taker. Our first point is in friendships, we must be intentional. Because all relationships take work, right? And perhaps that's why we as adults struggle making new friendships, is because all relationships take work. And we know that. And we know, oh, if I make a friendship with you, that's going to mean more work and I'm tired and I don't. So maybe that's part of the reason why relationships have sort of gone down, is we're not looking to make more work. All relationships take work. And so we have to be intentional in our friendships. And what is an intentional friendship? Well, first, let me tell you what it's not. Let me tell you what it's not. It's not simple convenience. Intentional friendship is not just convenience. Well, you're around, so you'll do. That's not friendship. And friendship is not proximity. Well, you're close by, so therefore we're friends. It's not just proximity. And that sounds obvious, right? Friendship is not just proximity. I mean, you can sit next to someone, probably are, who's not your friend. Hopefully, you are sitting next to someone who is your friend. But it's possible, right? You can sit next to someone who is not your friend. You can be in proximity of someone who's not your friend. That's sort of obvious, right? You can live next to someone and not be their friend. It's a little harder to notice, but I'm sure it's the case with most of us. You can live next to someone and not be their friend. You can share a bed with someone and not be their friend. Proximity is not friendship. Just because they're close to you doesn't mean you have an intimate relationship with them. And when I mean intimate, I mean spirits touching, love and care and desire for the best interest in the other person. You can share a bed with someone and not be their friend. Proximity does not equal intimacy or friendship. When Jesus makes a friend, he takes a step towards them. He moves towards them purposefully. He is intentionally drawing them closer, not just physically, but in terms of connection, deep and personal connection. He moves towards the other person. An intentional friendship requires both parties to be purposeful in their interactions and to put the effort in to nurture and maintain the relationship. Intentional friendship requires both parties to do the work. I also want you to notice in the passage that connection isn't friendship. So proximity isn't friendship. Neither is connection. We live in a world where we are more connected than ever before. I can talk to and hear the opinion of a person on the other side of the world in an instant. We are more connected than ever before, but connection does not equal friendship. Just because I'm connected online or via workplace or school or university or wherever I make connections in life doesn't mean that I have an intentional friendship with that other person. Facebook loves to call it friends. You have 2,200,200 friends. Well, they're not all friends. They can't be. They're connections. We're connected for sure. But they're not all friends. Because I can't be intentional. Actually, there was a study done, and it demonstrated that the human brain is only able to keep track of 150 relationships. 150 relationships. And that's proximity and connection, but not intentional, deep personal friendships. That's just, I know 150 people, I can keep track of them. And I suspect in the room, most of us are like, yeah, right. I struggle with 5 or 6. Right? It's hard. It takes work. Friendship is difficult. Intentionality means making the choice to step forward. If we want to have friendships, we need to make friends. And that means intentionally making the choice to step towards another person. If you want to have friends, you got to make friends. Does that sound like a parent thing? Like you tell your kids as they go to the playground, if you want to have friends, you need to make friends. Well, it's true for us as adults. If we want to have friendships, we need to make friendships. We have to be intentional. And then we have to put in the work. We have to be willing to put in the work, to make the effort. Jeffrey Hall, an associate professor of communication studies at the University of Kansas, published a study that revealed it takes 200 hours. 200 hours to make a deep, intentional friendship. 200 hours. No wonder it was easier for us when we were in school and when we were little. Much harder for those of us who are working to find 200 hours to invest in another person. Making friends is important, but it takes commitment. It takes commitment. And all of our relationships will go off track at some point. They will. But being intentional is the desire to put it back on track. It's so easy, because there's so many people in the world. It's easy for me to say, hey, let's be friends. And then as soon as you do something that bothers me or say something or express an opinion that is different than mine or wear your hair funny, friendship's over. Right? It's so easy because there's always another person. In order to have intentional relationships, which, as I said, we were created for and we require, our well-being requires us to have good and deep personal relationships, and that doesn't include your partner. That's someone outside of that circle of family. We're talking about friends, and we need that for our well-being. And our society needs that. In fact, it's what you call social equity, right? The ability to make bonds within the community. And right now, our social equity is low in North America. So being intentional means being willing to make a friend and then do the work. And in that relationship, we are transformed. And speaking of transformation, it's a big thing here at St. Andrews. It's right in our mission statement that transformation is what we're all about. We're all about transformation. And so, speaking of transformation, what I want to do is so that this is just not information, but it leads to transformation, and each of my points, I'm going to leave you with a question or two. And I'm going to ask that if you can, write it down. If not, remember it, but think about it during the week. And the question I want to ask you for this first point about intentionality is, who can you take a step towards this week? Jesus was intentional about making his friends. And he did it by walking and stepping closer to people. Who can you step towards this week? Who in your life could you move closer to this week? And a second question I want to leave you with is, what's the trajectory of your current relationships? And what I mean is, in 5 years, if nothing changes in your current relationships, will you be where you want to be with them? What's the trajectory of your current friendships and relationships? Are they going in a direction that in 5 years from now you'll be like, yeah, we're right where I hoped we would be? Or is there some work to do? Is there some relationship building that needs to be done? So that's our first point. Let's move on to our second. I'm going to look at John chapter 1, verse 35 to 39. I'll read it to you. The following day, John was again standing with two of his disciples as Jesus walked by. John looked at him and declared, "Look, there is the Lamb of God." When John's two disciples heard this, they followed Jesus. Jesus looked around and saw them following him. "What do you want?" he said to them. They replied, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying? Come and see," he said. It was about 4:00 in the afternoon when they went to see him, went to his place where he was staying, and they remained with him the rest of the day. Our second point is, beware of desire. Excuse me. You sing and then you speak, and your poor throat just says, ouch. Beware of desire is our second point. So all of us in this room have desires, and some of them we're aware of. Some of them are a little under the surface, but many of them we don't even share with anyone. We all have desires. The desire to be known, the desire to know, the desire to be recognized. There's desires that are under the surface. And these desires impact how we communicate, how we talk to one another. These desires are there, and they're shaping the way that you and I talk to one another. They also shape how we react to one another, right? So the desires that lay under the surface in our lives, they influence how we talk to one another, but they also influence how we react to one another, and also what we expect of one another. I don't know if you have Disney. Anyone have Disney Plus on their, yeah, sort of? So there was this show on Disney Plus called The Mandalorian. It was really great. But what they were doing was so expensive, they wouldn't have been able to build sets every week. They really wanted a high-quality program. So what they did was they built this giant projection screen with no seams, just this big, it's the size of a whole sound stage, and it was really high. And what they would do is project the backgrounds and the scenery so that they didn't have to leave the sound stage. And it was amazing because in this projection arena, the actors could see, it's not like green screen where they're looking at green bricks, they're actually seeing the landscape, they're seeing, and so that for filming, you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do the work of green screening and layering backgrounds on. It's all there already on the screen projected. And it was good for the actors, and it was good. Well, that term, projection arena, is what we do in our communication. You project your desire on me and your expectation on me. I project my desires and expectations on you. It's part of being human. There are our wants and our desires that live underneath the surface, and we project it. Our relationships are projection arenas. And you've probably experienced this. I know I do all the time, where you have an immediate dislike for someone. Haven't talked to them, haven't spent any time with them, but something about them you've projected onto them. Or you're having a conversation with someone, perhaps even someone you care deeply about, and they say something, and you are like, how could you say that to me? And then when you talk about it, hopefully you talk about it, you realize what you think they said didn't mean what you thought, because you've projected something onto them. And usually that comes from our stuff that's under the surface. But what that does is create expectations in relationships and in friendships. And everyone brings those into our relationships and into our friendships. And so Jesus, seeing these two disciples coming towards him, following him, he says, so what do you want? Which, weird question. So what do you want? But it's the ideal question, because what he's asking are, what are your expectations? What are your expectations? What do you want from this relationship? What do you want from this relationship? See, we have our own desires and our own expectations as we go into relationships with other people's. And it's wise for us to ask, what do I want from this relationship? And it's wise to also find out what the other person wants from the relationship, because we all have desires. And if we never have that discussion, what do I want from our friendship? If that's never reflected on, I could just be projecting onto you something that you never signed up for. I'll be mad at you when you don't do the things that I want you to do because I expected them, and you'll be mad at me when I don't do the things, and then I'm just a bad friend and you're a bad friend. And really it was simply a matter of expectations that weren't clarified going into the relationship. So we have to manage expectations. And what I've also noticed in life is that we pick up expectations. So I've got expectations. But I've noticed in life that I pick up other people's expectations too. Right? So I've got this yoke on my shoulder, and I've got all of my mom's expectations of me, my dad's expectations of me, maybe some significant other people's expectations, my employer's expectations of me, the government's expectation. This yoke is loaded with people's expectations of me. And then maybe the reason we're so afraid to make friendships is because we pick up all these expectations and it becomes tiresome and heavy. And we need to learn to manage them, which means we need to learn to talk about them and think about them and be aware of them. Hey, I'm happy to be your friend, but I've got a lot of things on my plate. So here's how our friendship's going to work. And if I miss something, don't be mad. It's not that I don't care about you. It's that I'm busy. You have to talk about these things. We have to be aware of our desires and expectation and other people's desires and expectations so that we don't project onto them our stuff, and also that they know how to relate to us. Because otherwise you get angry at them for not meeting your expectations that you never shared with them and never gave them an opportunity to say, yeah, I want that in my life, or I don't want that in my life. Right? Expectations matter. And I just want to say something else because I feel like there's someone in here that may need to hear this. Other people's expectations are not your obligations. Other people's expectations are not your obligations. You get to choose. You get to choose, right? Friendships are intentional. They're purposeful. I get to choose. If I choose to take my wife Sylvia's expectations on my shoulders, then I will work at them because I chose that. And I continue to choose that, right? Expectations. Other people's expectations of us are not obligations. So as we consider our friends, we need to be intentional and we need to be aware of desire. And let me leave you with 2 questions on this point, and we'll move to our third and final. What do they, the other person in your life, want from their friendship with you? What do they want from their friendship with you? I've asked you to step closer to people to make friendships. What does the other person, that future confidant, what do they want from you in this friendship? And can you give it? And then the second question I want to ask is, what do you want out of a friendship? What do you want out of a friendship? And is it more than the other person can give? And please hear me, I don't want to hear next week that everybody ended all their friendships. Like, well, Bert, I thought about it and that's not what I'm saying. But as you go into friendships, think about it. Think about it. And so this leads to our last point, which is, if you're a note taker, be selective. Be selective. Our friendships, they transform us, right? They matter. They're important. We should be selective in them. I'm going to read 3 Bible passages for you. They're about the life of Jesus. I'm going to start in Luke 10, verse 1. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them out ahead, 2 by 2, to every town and place he was about to go. 72 others. Then I'm going to read from Mark 3, verse 14. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. 12. 72, 12. Mark 14, verse 33 to 34. This is in the Mount of Olives in Gethsemane just before he's crucified. He took James, Peter, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here with me and keep watch. Did you hear that? 72, 12. I can't do 12 with my fingers. And then 3. 72, 12, and then 3. You are a finite human being. I know we don't like to think that, but you have limitations. They're real. You can't have relationships with every person that bumps into you in your life. You can't have intentional, deep, personal relationships with every person that bumps into your life. You have to be selective. You have to be strategic. You have to be thoughtful. You can't put 200 hours into every person. You can only select a few and put the 200-hour investment into them. Jesus had 72, his crowd. He had 12, the people he invested in. And then when times got tough and he was sad, he had 3. 72, 12, 3. 3 close friends who he could count on when things were at their worst. We need to build friendships. Our society needs us. Our community needs us. St. Andrews needs to be a place where people make friendships, right? Hopefully you come here and you make friends, lifelong, meaningful, deep friendships, because friendships matter. They're important to our well-being. As a religious practitioner, I'll say it's important for your soul. You were created in the image of God, who is relationship. As someone who's done a little study, it's important for your mental health that you have relationships. It's also important for our society. It's our social equity. It's the foundation of all the other things in our lives. We need friendships. They transform us. They help us be better. They help us cope with our problems. We need people who we can say, this is what I'm going through right now, and have them go, let me listen to you. And they not only transform our individual lives, they transform our communities. What would it look like if we were friends with our neighbors? Would our street, our apartment, our building be a better place to live? Yes, if we were friends with our neighbor. Our society needs us to build social bonds. Life is better when it's done together. And we do have people in our church who have long-term relationships with each other. Talking to Doug and talking to Doug this weekend, or this week gone by, and he was sharing that he has friends that he's known from St. Andrews for 30 plus years. It's a good friendship, 30 years, Maybeth, right? People who they're connected to, that they've known and they met in the heart of the church for 30 years. And I know they're not the only story. I know as I look around that there are other folks here who have built lifelong, important, and deep personal friendships within the church. It is going to be the strength of the church as we build friendships and as we get closer together, as we encourage one another to follow Jesus in the context of friendship. Friends matter. And this is going to be my plug, and we'll end. That's why small groups matter. That's why small groups matter. Gathering in small groups, this is not set up for us to make friends, right? We're all in lines and pews, and I'm talking, you don't get to. This is not a friendship-making environment. What happens in the coffee hour, what happens in your small groups and in your Bible studies, what happens when you're volunteering together, maybe working the soundboard back there together, or volunteering at coffee hour in the kitchen together, that's the place where friendships are made. And that's where we need to plug in. As I'm serving coffee with someone, I can say, hey, how you doing this week? And they can say whatever they're going to say, and I will listen, right? It's in serving together. It's in relationships that are made in small groups when we're praying together that real and lasting, intentional relationships are formed. Can we, this year, make an effort to make friends? Can this be a community where friendships are made? Can we be intentional about it? Can we be purposeful about stepping towards one another? Can we be willing to do the work? My promise to you is life is better when it's done together. And yes, there'll be sacrifice because it takes effort and time. but the rewards far outweigh. Just your emotional health and well-being will improve as you make friends. Can this be a place where we volunteer to do coffee hour, where we volunteer to join a praise team, where we make friends, where we unite with one another? Hey, I'm going to invite the praise team up to sing our final hymn, which I hope will also be a prayer. And while they're getting into place, let's pray. Gracious God, I thank you so much that you created us to be in relationship with each other. And though we seem like we're far apart, we're all human. We all have desires, we all have hurts. And in those places we overlap and we connect. I pray that St.Andrews would be a community of people who make friends, that our spaces of worship and our spaces of service together would be a place where friendships are forged. Lord, help us to see you in one another. Help us to care for one another. Help us to be a place where we know your love. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen.